Hello there, I'm Prempire here and I'm at Vultr here at Vultr. In today's Tech Talk, we'll discuss building interactive applications with Laravel, Supabase, and Elasticsearch Vultr marketplace applications to help you increase user engagement and enable dynamic experiences with these self-hosted applications. To begin with, why interactive web applications? Interactive web applications are highly scalable and compatible with multiple user environments and devices to help you deliver web content. Can integrate with your existing applications or software stacks using APIs, which actually gives you an edge to diversify and further enhance your web application performance. Interactive web applications, on the other hand, increase user engagement and personalization of web content that you put out there to your users. Among the applications that enable you to actually create interactive web applications is Laravel. Laravel is an open source PHP framework that is used to build dynamic web applications that actually run on multiple devices. Laravel uses the MVC architecture to enable development of responsive web applications. The architecture stands for models, views, and controllers that Laravel uses to actually enable multiple components in your applications. Laravel also supports code reusability that you can actually apply in multiple projects depending on your needs. On the other hand, Supabase is another application that actually steps in. Supabase is an open source self-hosted alternative to Firebase with a Postgres database backend. It enables authentication management for mobile and web applications on your server and to integrate with your existing applications or any other stacks. Supabase supports RESTful APIs that enable you to integrate with all types of real-time applications such as Laravel applications. On the other hand, Elasticsearch enables you to actually deliver search experiences to your users. It's an open source distributed search and analytics engine that is optimized for speed to enable the display of search results depending on your web content types. Also, Elasticsearch enables real-time search capabilities in your web applications similar to a search engine. Elasticsearch supports semantic search that enables you to improve search results based on user queries and patterns as they do search them on your web applications. And so, based on this background, let me take you right into a demo where we shall deploy a Vultr marketplace application for Supabase, Laravel, and Elasticsearch to enable communication between these applications, develop and run interactive web applications using these applications on your server. And so, without any further ado, let's get right into the demo process. First and foremost, let's deploy the Vultr marketplace applications for Laravel, Supabase, and Elasticsearch. To do this, navigate to the Vultr customer portal and click Deploy in the Compute category to actually access the Deploy New Instance page and be able to actually deploy your instances. So choose your desired instance type and select a location that is actually much closer to you so that you can easily access your instances. For example, for my case, let me select Paris, France. And then in the Choose Image section, this is where we actually get to select our applications. So just click Marketplace Apps and Laravel is right here. So let's click Laravel and choose a plan. For instance, I'll choose a plan with 8 GB. And now in the additional features, since we are going to run these applications to communicate with each other, it's highly recommended that you use a private network such as a Vultr VPC. This is because the multiple threads are waiting your instance on the internet. And also, the connection between these applications is slowed down by routing policies between the wide area network. So let's go ahead and select VPC and give this instance a hostname of our choice, for example, Laravel instance. Click Deploy now to actually go ahead and deploy our first instance. Let's repeat this process for the other applications. In the Choose Type, let's keep the type similar and again select the same location. In the Marketplace Apps this time around, let's go ahead and do a search, for example, for Supabase. And now let's select the specifications for this instance that we would like to run. And in additional features, make sure that you select Vultr VPC again. Yeah, so let's go ahead and give this instance a name again. So for example, Supabase instance, and click Deploy now to actually go ahead and deploy this instance. And now let's deploy another server, which is going to be for Elasticsearch. So let's select the instance type, and again select the same location as we have done for Supabase and Laravel. Under Marketplace Apps, come right here and search for Elasticsearch. Select it, and let's select the specification for our instance. Enable Vultr VPC again, and let's give it a name such as Elastic Instance. Click deploy now to also deploy this start instance. So you'll have to give these instances just a few minutes to successfully deploy and be accessible. Now that our instances are ready to use, if you actually click each of the instances to access the management page, for example, Supabase, you will see that we have some app instructions with some default passwords you can use to actually access these applications. So for instance, Supabase has a separate dashboard. Let's go ahead and access it. So just click the link right here on port 8000, and you see that we are queried for a password. So let's just copy the username right here and the generated password. Click sign in to actually access the Supabase dashboard. And right here, our Supabase instance is up and running. Let's go ahead and test Laravel. We simply have to access the server IP address. And as you can see, we have the default Laravel page displaying quite well. This is the starter kit, and you can modify it depending on your choices to actually modify your project to have your custom web content displayed right here. On the other hand, let's go to Elasticsearch, and you can run these curl commands to actually test access to Elasticsearch, but let's get the browser option instead. So if I put this in my browser, and as you can see in this Laravel output, this is the default output that outputs a tagline of for search, which means that our Elasticsearch instance is running. Our Laravel site is also up and running, and we also have access to our new Supabase dashboard. So let's go ahead and access all these instances over SSH to actually allow them to interactively connect to each other. So right within my SSH session, I have already set up a non-root sudo user so that we can actually avoid using the root user. This sudo user is called Linux user, which is commonly used as the limited user when available to you when deploying an instance. So I have access to my Supabase SSH terminal. I have access to the Laravel instance as well. I have access to the Elastic instance as well. So let's enable these applications to actually communicate with each other. Elasticsearch by default listens for connections on the default port 9200. And as you can see in the default firewall configuration, you will notice that this port is allowed to communicate through the main server interface. So that's why we are able to access it in a web browser. On the other hand, our Laravel app is up and running, and it's listening for connections on the TCP port 8000. Supabase, on the other hand, has something key that we need. If you look at its firewall table, we only have the HTTP and HTTPS ports listed right here, and a few other ports that are needed by Supabase to run. However, an important port is missing, and that port is the PostgreSQL port 5432. So we shall not expose this port to the internet. Instead, we shall utilize the Vultr VPC network that we have attached to each of these instances to enable private networking and communication between these instances, to enable fast data retrieval and connection between these instances. So let's go ahead and verify the associated VPC addresses. So for instance, for the Supabase instance, it's the interface ID np8s0 with the address of 10.24.96.4. So let's copy this address and ping this address from the Laravel instance. And as you can see, we have a connection to the Supabase instance. So let's also see the IP address for the Laravel instance. So for it, it has a .3 network address. So let's instead go to the Elasticsearch instance and ping .3 to verify that we have access to the Laravel instance from the Elasticsearch instance. So as you can see, we have a communication between the Elasticsearch instance to the Laravel instance, and from the Laravel instance to the Supabase instance. So this means all these instances are communicating correctly on the Vultr VPC network. So just to verify the Elasticsearch IP address, it's a .5 and uses the same network details as the rest of the instances attached to this Vultr VPC network. So let's get right into the process of actually integrating these applications. First off, let's go into Laravel and enable a few features that are not available on the default starter kit. So our starter kit looks like this. And as you may notice, we do not have any authentication features here, which are login and register. So let's go into our Laravel web directory, which is www.html. And if we list the contents here, we simply have to go into my Laravel app, which is the default application directory for the Vultr marketplace application. And if you long list files here, you will see that these files are owned by the www web server user. So this means to modify any files in this directory, you must use the sudo command, because using the root user directly is not recommended. So let's get started with the process. First off, let's install dependencies that are required by the bridge stack. The bridge stack will enable us to actually enable authentication. So this bridge stack requires npm and node.js installed on this instance. So let's go ahead and install this, and let's just give this installation process a moment. And as the installation process completes, let's just go into our Supabase instance right here and actually allow network connections to the Postgres SQL port 5432. So to do that, I just have to keep note of the VPC interface right here, which is ENP8S0. So let's allow incoming network connections on this interface to the Postgres SQL port 5432. And let's restart the UFW application in order to actually reload these firewall changes. And let's just verify if these new rules are available. So you can see that this port is actually exposed on only the VPC interface. So let's verify if our installation is complete. So now our installation is complete on the Laravel side, but let's first go ahead and also allow connections on the Elasticsearch instance. So just do the same, and this time around, let's just allow 9200, which is the Elasticsearch port, and let's restart UFW. As you may notice in our firewall table now, we have 9200 allowed on the VPC interface. So our connections are all done, and our installation is also done on the Laravel instance. So to proceed forward with our Laravel instance, we do not need to allow any connections to the Laravel instance, because it will be connecting to these other instances instead of them connecting back to it. So let's go ahead and install Breeze in our Laravel project. Run the composer command, accept the root user warning in order to actually be able to write files. So the installation is successful. And now let's go ahead and run Breeze to actually add the necessary views, authentication files, routes, and controllers. If you notice in this project and list any resources in the views directory, you'll notice that we only have one file, but when we actually go ahead to run the Breeze install command to actually enable some authentication features, we shall have the directory populated with some new data. So let's go ahead and select Blade with Alpine and enable dark mode. PHP unit is the preferred framework, and let's give this a second to actually install. And now that Breeze has installed all necessary packages, let's actually view the directory again to see if there are any new files actually. And if you see the views directory again, now we have an authentication directory and the blend or PHP file. So these enable you to actually enable authentication in your Laravel application. So next up, let's install all necessary dependencies to actually go ahead and enable Vitae, which is another package that is required for authentication to successfully work. And now that npm is complete, let's actually run npm build in order to enable Vitae to run. As you can see this output, we're enabling it to run and be able to execute it on our front end. So this is it for starters. We have enabled the authentication interface. Let's just go into our browser session and verify the changes. So if we refresh this a little bit, we now have two new options, login and register. This means users can actually authenticate with our Laravel application. If you just go into login, it will actually give you a login screen. And if you go into register, it will actually also give us the same thing. you'll be able to register and log into this application. However, any operation here will fail. For example, let's try logging in and just use any password, and if you try to log in, you'll receive an error. This is because by default you are supposed to come around and enable your MySQL settings in this application, but we're not using MySQL this time around. We are enabling Supabase to actually handle this login and register process. And so let's head back to the terminal session, and this time around let's first of all install the PostgreSQL plugin for PHP. Once we have installed this PHP module for PostgreSQL, let's go ahead and edit the project environment configuration file. And right within this configuration file, let's change MySQL to PGSQL, and let's introduce a new string, which is the database URL here. Make sure that this IP address actually points to our Supabase VPC address. And just a reminder, our Supabase VPC address is 10.24.96.4. And if we copy it right here and just paste it within, and for the PostgreSQL password, just navigate back to the deployment page for Supabase. And if you notice, in the app instructions, you have a Postgres login password right here. So just copy it and let's apply it in this PostgreSQL string. So our file now looks like this. Let's just go ahead and introduce another field for the password to actually make sure that it's repeated and we can actually securely use this configuration. So this is how my configuration looks like. Make sure that these configurations are actually valid and can be used to actually access your Supabase instance. So let's save this file and close it. Next up, let's go ahead and open the database configuration file. So right within here, we have a couple of connections. Let's just find the PostgreSQL connection and change a few details in here. Let's just make sure that the Supabase VPC address is actually listed here as the DB host. So just a reminder, the Supabase address is 10.24.96.4 just in my session, and the default port is 5432. Let's change the database to Postgres since that's what's the default that we are available to, but you can always create your own databases and replace them right here. So the DB username is Postgres as well because this is a Vue user. And yet again, let's paste in the password from our app instructions right here. So let's just paste it here. Then let's close and save this file. So let's go ahead and migrate the project database. And the migrations are now complete. So now let's go into Supabase and verify if this migration is actually successful as listed in our output and if we have some new data. So in the Supabase dashboard, just click database. And if you see in tables, we have a couple of new tables right here. These tables are written by Laravel. And just to verify that, we have a users table right here, which actually corresponds with our login authentication that we're supposed to use on this Laravel starter kit. So actually, to test this entire process fully and verify if we have successfully enabled authentication, just come right here and let's refresh this Laravel starter kit. This time around, let's click register and let's just call this example user. Let's actually apply a sample email and just a very simple password. And now that this is complete, click register to actually access the Laravel dashboard. And as you can see, we are now logged in. And if you just click here to profile, you'll actually see that we have some profile information right here. For example, my name is listed and my dummy email is also listed here. I can update the password and I can delete this account. But where is this information actually stored? It's stored in Supabase. Supabase is actually handling the authentication process for this application of ours. So if we just come back right here into Supabase and just refresh our dashboard a little bit, and this time around you can see that users has a new row that is estimated at 1. So let's see if it actually has some data. Just click table editor And once that's done, click users, and you will see that we have a new user right here with my name, and the password is well encrypted, and the email is right here. So if you just look into our profile information, you'll see that this information matches. But let's just actually go ahead and log out just to verify if this application is working correctly. Well, let's just create another user. This time around, let's call our user admin, and let's actually use admin@example.com and another strong password as required by the application, and click register. So we have created another user called admin, and is successfully logged in. Let's just verify if this data is available. So under our users table, you can see that we have another user, admin. So this means Laravel and Supabase are correctly working together to enable authentication. However, the default schema is public. If you use something like auth, Supabase will take over the entire authentication process. This is how you can actually integrate Laravel and Supabase in the most basic way possible. You can change your dashboard logic to actually present your users a couple of options or a couple of features you'd like them to access. Now that we have enabled Laravel to work with Supabase as the authentication backend, let's actually go ahead and write some data from our Laravel application to Elasticsearch that you can actually apply some logic to enable search results in your application. So to do that, let's head back to our SSH session for the Laravel application. And this time around, let's install the PHP client for Elasticsearch. So I will do a composer require with the sudo command in order to enable writing to this directory. Wait for the installation process to actually complete installing the Elasticsearch PHP client. And now that the Elasticsearch PHP client is successfully installed, let's go ahead and create a new service file. So first off, let's navigate to the app directory and verify if we have a services directory. It's missing, so let's create it. So let's create the services directory. And now that it's created, let's go into this directory and let's create a new file called Elasticsearch service.php. So this file right here will contain the logic for our Elasticsearch service that we can actually use in order to index some content from our Laravel application to our Elasticsearch instance. So let's populate this file, enter the Elasticsearch VPC address, and just for a reminder, it uses the address 10.24.96.5. So if we apply .5, and right within this file, you can see that we have a set hosts directive right here that actually defines the Elasticsearch address and destination port. So let's save and close this file. Remember, you can access this code using the paste bin link to the description of this video. So let's go back to the root directory of our project. So let's actually access the PHP Tinker tool that allows us to actually access our Laravel application using CLI. So let's actually import the service that we just created. And now that it's successfully imported, you can see that we are using the correct directory structure. And now let's actually index a new document to Elasticsearch. So let's run this. And as you can see, it has the ID one with the title Tech Talk document and some sample content, this is the first document indexed to Elasticsearch. Right now, based on this output, we have indexed new content from the Laravel application to Elasticsearch for processing. To verify if this content is actually being processed, let's access our Supabase instance, which is in the same VPC network as the Elasticsearch instance. Let's choose Carl and try to access the Elasticsearch endpoint with our data. Our Elasticsearch instance is using .5 and the 9200 port, and we have our index, sample index, and let's see what output it actually gives us. And as you can see, we have a JSON output right here, and it has our data that has been written from the Laravel application right here. Let's jump into a web browser and let's append our search index and let's search. So you can see that we have our output that has been indexed from the Laravel application. So you can actually create new views and routes to actually create a search form in your Laravel application that allows you to actually pull this content from Elasticsearch and deliver it to users in a much faster way possible. So just to experiment if this content is actually coming from our Laravel application, let's go ahead and create a new ID. This time around, let's change the content to fit something more custom, just for demonstration purposes. So let's give it this an ID of 2, and this time around, let's call it example document, and let's change this content that we are indexing to Elasticsearch to something like example content indexed to Elasticsearch. And so press enter, and yet again, we have indexed new content from our Laravel application to our Elasticsearch instance. So Elasticsearch can pull this content right from a database or when indexed manually like we are doing to actually deliver it to your users. So let's just refresh this page a little bit, and you can see that we have some new content as we have indexed it. It has the ID 2 and it has our content, which is example content indexed to Elasticsearch. Just to explore our examples further, let's just create another ID which is 3, and this time around let's actually go ahead and call the greetings from Vultr. And now let's change our content and just name this hello world greetings from Vultr. Now let's press enter again, and let's actually just see if this data is indexed. So you can see that this new data is also indexed by Elasticsearch and can be pulled and served through our front end when we enable the appropriate routes, views, and models. So actually, just to verify, let's run our call command from the Supabase instance, which is actually connected to the same VPC network as Elasticsearch. So you can see that all our results are available in JSON format. And just like that, we have integrated Laravel with Elasticsearch to actually enable interactive search. And you can actually implement this in your application by writing new logic, which includes views, a new model, and routes to actually pull this content from Elasticsearch to enable search on the front end application. For example, this starter kit right here, you can apply a search form and just pull this content from Elasticsearch using a new view and a new route to actually deliver to your users. And so, we have successfully integrated a Laravel application with Supabase to enable authentication and further indexed new content from Laravel to Elasticsearch. Within our demo, we used the Vultr VPC to actually enable these applications to interactively communicate to each other in a much faster way without hitting the internet. So, this way, you have an interactive web application that uses a separate backend and Elasticsearch to actually deliver some search results to your users. And so, I hope you did find this Tech Talk useful, and if you did, I would like to thank you for watching and see you in the next Vultr Tech Talk.